Hello everyone, so I did my persuasive speech on how I think that student athletes should be paid. Imagine performing in front of fans who are benefiting off of your talents and you are not receiving any proceeds. Well, this is the case for every NCAA student athlete. Essentially, they are being taken advantage of and should be paid for their athletic abilities. People underrate the task of being a full-time student and a full-time athlete. These responsibilities can be overwhelming and student athletes deserve some type of financial reward. It should be mandatory that college athletes be paid. Imagine acting in a movie and not receiving any proceeds. Well, student athletes are experiencing this in each and every contest. First, student athletes generate serious revenue. Next, playing college sports is time consuming and expensive. Last, student athletes put their bodies on the line each game they play. Let's get started by discussing the impact student athletes have on revenue. The average worth of an athlete's scholarship is around $25,000, meaning over the course of 4 years, it is worth around $100,000. Although certain athletes may receive scholarships, it's still a problem because of the expenses required to attend a scholarship exceed the amount that athletes are awarded in their scholarships. According to Bleacher Report, despite receiving a full scholarship, there are costs that are not included in the scholarship. The scholarship covers most of the expenses, but some estimated that actual costs of living are $1,500 more than covered. In 2017, the NCAA reported a financial milestone when it reached $1.1 billion in revenue. Most of this money is from a gigantic contract with CBS and Turner, the companies that own TNT and TBS. These two companies are paying a combined $800 million a year to broadcast March Madness, and the players that make this tournament possible don't see any of that money. The NCAA wants to use players in video games to make a profit. However, players aren't allowed to make money off of selling their own jersey, gear, or other merchandise. But the NCAA is able to make money from selling jerseys, gear, and clothing. This is simply unfair. Now that we have covered revenue, let's talk about how playing college sports is time-consuming and expensive. According to a 2017 NCAA survey, Division I student athletes spend an average of 35.4 hours per week on athletic activities during the season. This leaves little to no time to have a part-time job. According to that same NCAA survey, Division I student athletes spend 2% of their time each week at a job. This is equivalent to 3.4 hours per week and roughly $25 at a minimum wage job. This really doesn't help solve the case at all. Tuition, gear, recovery items, and other necessities needed to perform are not free or cheap. Many athletes pay money out of their own pockets to be able to perform at a level they compete at, but the NCAA and the universities receive these financial benefits. Also, student athletes may struggle with finding a job during the summer. Even though it may be the off-season, most athletes spend much of their time devoted to working out and athletics. Now that we have talked about time-consuming and expenses, let's talk about the physical risk of being a student athlete. Student athletes are constantly risking their bodies in regards to short and long-term damage. In the 2013 NCAA basketball tournament, Louisville player Kevin Ware suffered a horrific injury to his lower right leg while attempting to block an opposing player's shot. Fortunately, he recovered. There have been numerous instances of players becoming paralyzed by tackles or hits on the football fields or suffering career-ending ligament tears on the basketball court. Because they were unpaid all along, this puts them in a tough situation. Also, student athlete scholarships are taken away from them when they face significant injuries. Essentially, they are no longer considered useful as an athlete. According to a New York Times article, Kyle Hardrick, who was a basketball player at the University of Oklahoma, lost his basketball scholarship after tearing his meniscus in his right knee. These are all examples that the universities only care about the ability of the player to perform. In conclusion, we've discussed revenue, time-consuming and expenses, and the physical risk of being a student athlete. Overall, student athletes face a lot of adversity to be able to perform at the highest level they compete at. Therefore, they should really get paid. I encourage you to support this claim because there are several athletes who come from poor backgrounds that are just trying to provide for their families. Just think about the amount of debt accumulated each year from student athletes because most of them don't make it professionally.